Hello dear students, once again welcome to another essay discussion regarding our mains. We are currently going to discuss some of the topics that, in fact, we'll be discussing all of the topics that have featured in the mains 2025 paper. This is a yearly thing that we keep doing. On the day of the mains, the paper gets discussed, the essay paper gets discussed, we brainstorm it together, we try to generate what all other different interpretations possible, etc. So in case you're watching this right now, I hope it becomes very insightful for those who are preparing for the next mains and for those who have written this year's mains exam. Primarily just to check what could have been the interpretations possible. Now, as we talk about the topics, before that, I would just like to say a few words about the general analysis of this paper. This paper has, in comparison to last 2 to 3 years, been one of those kinds where it's completely philosophical or abstract topic based. Okay, and when it comes to the last year or in intermittent years, there have been times where, at least in section B, you had more of a subject wise or a very fixed kind of thing from maybe international relations or from society or from women issues, etc. But in this paper, both the sections did feature abstract topics. Now, in the last time such a paper did come, it was comparatively very difficult. At least some of the topics could generally be not broken down into something simpler. So those topics were deemed like, okay, if you touch those topics, then you have to come up with some sort of a very higher philosophy or something in your essays. But this year is quite different on that sort, because all of the topics, if you approach all of the 8 topics that have been given, and you need to pick just one from each section, but if you look at the general trend of all of the 8 topics, these are concepts that you would have already trained in. Like it would have been related to thoughts, related to values, related to topics like, similar on the lines of pen is mightier than the sword. So these are the kinds of things that you would have already trained yourself in if you are preparing for your mains, and thus this is the reason why this year's paper is considered to be a relatively more easier than the other years. So again, we have to wait and see how the valuation of these papers do come about, because last few years the essay paper marks have been quite low. It's been said that the essay paper marks, even for toppers, if you look at it, they have normalized it to somewhere around 105 to 120 range, and somewhere in the middle is your average marking. So around 105, 110 could be your average marking, and then the highest marks possible is like 125 and 30. So and very exceptionally you might find 140, but that is not the norm. So again, when it comes to this year, we have to wait and see as to how the valuation of the paper would go. But as it is, the paper in comparison to last year's have been a little bit more easier in terms of what kind of topics can be. When I say essay topics are easier, it just means that these are topics for which you can break down the topic and you can generate multiple dimensions. If you cannot do that, is where an essay topic becomes a little bit rusty, a little bit difficult for the students. Now, without much delay, let's go into the first topic. I'll just show you the sections. Section A featured 4 topics, which one comes from truth or honesty of sorts, the other one comes from the supreme art of war, then comes from thought-based things, and then the last one is regarding, it's a very general quote that we even use in normal parlance, which is best lessons are learned through bitter experiences. Okay, now let's try to explore each of these topics in detail. The first topic that we are going to explore is truth knows no color. Such an interesting topic. Primarily, when I read the topic itself, I was like, okay, so there could be like 2 major interpretations of this topic. Let's try to explore that. It says truth knows no color. Okay, so when you say something knows no color, the very first common interpretation of it is like, oh yeah, truth is equivalent to everyone. It sees no color. That is one interpretation that is there, that, you know, you could be black, you could be white, you could be belonging to different religions, you could be of different genders, and still truth will not see that as a distinction. So color here could be something of denoting a certain distinction between people. Got it? It's a distinction between people. So any kind of distinction that could be leading to a prejudice or a bias can be included in this idea. So we know that. We normally know all of these points of distinction, which is it could be ethnicity, it could be what country you're coming from, it could be what gender you belong to, it could also be what religion. In countries like India, it could be what caste you belong to, what region you come from, etc. Got it? So this is the most common interpretation that I believe every student will strike up with when they see truth knows no color. Because when they say truth knows no color, it could mean that truth sees no color. Okay. So when you say truth sees no color is where this distinction comes about. Now, another interpretation that could be possible over here is the fact that truth actually cannot be of any color. Okay, I'll explain this. Truth, we normally say in local, when we study ethics actually, they say that, you know, truth can be either black or truth can be either white. Okay, or truth can come in multiple shades. Then you will have to swallow whatever shade you get. So these are all quotes related to truth and colors. Got it? So one interpretation is very general. It can be direct like this. The other interpretation could be the fact that truth cannot be boxed into colors. So this is one part we have to explore a little bit more. Truth cannot be boxed into colors. Truth cannot be black or white. Truth cannot be, because truth, what may be one person's truth could be another person's falsity. So there could be multiple interpretations of what actually truth is. Got it? But despite all that, what happens is you can have multiple interpretations of what truth is, which means that truth can be of many, many, many colors. But at the end of the day, truth will remain as just an objective fact and thus will have no color. Hear me out in a little bit more clarity over here. So the second interpretation tries to put, or when they say truth knows no color, it basically means truth feels no color. So this is truth sees no color, and this is truth feels no color. Feels no color means truth is neither black nor white. Okay, truth is very absolute, and truth can be of, if it is, it can be of just a single shade thing. That is one other interpretation. Truth can be of multiple shades. One shade of truth might affect an other shade of truth. Okay, one shade of lie might affect another shade of truth. In this way, I personally feel this part can have so many more dimensions to be included in your essay. Now, when you ask what are the points to be generated, or how can we generate points, this is where for me the essay topic becomes something that is accessible to all. Okay, so when I say this topic where truth knows no color can be interpreted as truth sees no color and truth feels no color, there in itself you have created these two dichotomy where you can relate to the topic. Okay, now how do we explore that in the essay? First of all, because this is something that a lot of students are going to be a little bit confused about, let me just take up that first. And this is something that I think everybody knows and this is the idea that was actually propounded by a lot of ancient philosophers at a time where truth, truth was biased based on what background you had. Okay, so for example, when you have someone coming and telling you the earth is round, people saw not that as the truth. But what happened? It became about why is he saying this? What is his background? Why is he doing all of these things? So what happens over there is the truth got distincted based on it. Another aspect would be, again, if you're relating to this over here, you can go about and say, no, earth is not round, earth is flat, and you can say all of these things. But what happens? Finally, even beyond time, what has happened? The truth persists. Okay, so let's try to see how to break this down into different parts. So when we say truth knows no color and we are going with the interpretation that truth feels no color, it primarily says that truth is absolute, it's objective, and most commonly truth is fact-based. These are the permanent things about truth. But based on different aspects, based on circumstances, based on time of history that you are seeing the truth in, based on your personal prejudices, what can happen? Truth can change for each person. So this is like me telling you, truth is this very transparent, let's say, to make it into very simple terms, and maybe this can be helpful for someone who's writing, maybe trying to attempt to write this essay. So how I see it is, imagine truth to be this very transparent color. Transparency itself has no color, but then understand something very transparent and, very, very, light absorbing kind of a thing that is there. Now that is the color of truth, suppose, okay. And based on all of these things, you are going on seeing it in different sites and saying, oh, that's red, that's blue, that's green. So you are, based on your circumstances and time of history that you're seeing a truth in, or your prejudices, you are giving different interpretations to it. Okay, but that interpretation is not sustainable. That interpretation, for example, at the time of the Second World War, the shade of truth that people wanted to believe in was they are doing, or the Nazi army is doing all this for the benefit of Germany. Okay, you see truth today, you see it as an objective thing that, okay, for whatever cause, whatever happened, so many lakhs of people got murdered for it. And that is the truth. Got it? So what happens is, based on all of these things, truth changes its shade. But once you are going on doing this process only, finally what happens? It comes in, after some time, there is the reveal of the truth where it's like, see, I'm not red or green or blue, I'm just transparent. Okay, so truth is absolute, objective, fact-based. To make it more simple, truth is transparency color. But based on these aspects, you see it in different colors. And in fact, when I was brainstorming this essay, if I were to write this essay in the actual exam, I would actually go about doing this, showing truth in, is truth red? Is truth green? Is truth black and white? And then negate each point and say that, no, you cannot have it like that. Why? Because truth is transparent. negate each point. So that is an, again, interesting kind of a thing I felt to, structure my essay. Anyway, if you are not thinking of it, don't confuse yourself with that. But nevertheless, this is something that you can try out while writing your model essays or something, and you submit to your mentors. Okay. Now, coming back to this, so I'm saying that based on my truth, based on my circumstances, I keep on naming truth, which is transparent colored, into red, green, blue, and these different things. See, these are symbolic. Okay. Now, I'm like, okay, time has passed, and I'm starting to realize that maybe it's not red or green or blue. It's not all of these shades. But maybe that single transparent colored truth can have different gradations in it. It can be white, it can be grey, it can be a little bit different shades. So what does that mean there? That means truth, in these cases, truth is subjective. And here I am saying, yes, in some scenarios, truth can be subjective. That means it can vary, but that subjectivity is just to show the different aspects of it. So if I'm saying finally truth is transparency colored, before that there could have been a white color, before that there could have been a silver white color, before that there could have been a grey color. That means what? Finally, for truth to reach to its transparent color, you have to pass it, or that truth has to pass through different shades. Okay, like again, if the truth of India is the fact that, we got, in 1947, we got partitioned, and then there was India, and then there was Pakistan. This is the truth that we know, and in this partition, a lot of people from both the sides did die. Okay, but to reach to that truth, what has happened? There are multiple shades to it as to why that truth had to be done. Okay, or why that truth had to be revealed, that we had to partition. So those shades, the why, what, how of the truth happens to be the different colors that are beyond it. Okay, so here you can say finally it reaches to the transparent truth, but there are foreshadows and there are things behind it, and that shows us the different circumstances of the truth itself. So this is where we have debates that say that, you would have heard of these debates that say, why did India have to be partitioned, or who was the leader of partition? See, these are all gradations of that same truth that finally led to the fact that truth was transparent color and we have partitioned. Understand? So again, these are, I hope you are getting the idea that each of these parts can be explored in detail. Okay, first I am saying truth feels no color, and then I am going on saying that all of these parts, like, truth is transparency colored, basically meaning all of these facts, and based on our biases, it can be circumstances or whatever, you see it in different colors altogether. But then finally, again, what happens is truth will still prevail. Okay, and then again, then I'm saying truth is subjective. It has a subjective element, as in like you have to see it in the context of what happened. So this is all the context of how this truth came about. But even then what happens? Truth is still transparency colored. It's just that the context of it is grey and white and silver and everything. But truth is finally again transparency colored. Okay, so this is one way you can explore that part. I hope. See, again, when I brainstorm essays, all I try to do is how many dimensions in what all areas can I bring into this topic so that the examiner gets like, oh, wow, I didn't think of that, So this is one type, and obviously the other one still stands. Like truth sees no color. That truth will always, beyond all kinds of discrimination, truth will always prevail. Okay, So these are the two major interpretations possible in this essay. I hope those who wrote it have tried, exploring these interpretations in your paper also. Now let's go into the next topic. Very interesting one. And this is the topic I said is very similar on the lines of pen is mightier than the sword. Okay. So the topic says the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Okay. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. So it's very clear there is a war going on. And what is the kind of wars that we normally see? That we'll come to that. And then how can you capture the enemy, or how can you stop the enemy, or how can you decimate the enemy without fighting? Okay, so subdue, the word, it can be related to any of these things. How can you eliminate? How can you phase it out? How can you stop it a little bit? All of these terms do come in. And the fact that there is an enemy, don't think of enemy as a country or person or anything. Enemy can vary from an ideology, a philosophy, a value, a thought. Any of these things can be your enemy. Okay. And fighting over here also will change depending on what we are talking about. So this topic over here, when they initially gave it, they are trying to ask us to say that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. When they say this fighting over here in the topic actually means that you're not going to use violence, you're not going to use unscrupulous methods. Unscrupulous means, not very ethical methods. Okay, you're not going to use violence. You're not going to use unscrupulous methods. You are also not going to use force on people. You're not going to practice something that is considered morally invalid today. Okay, and the enemy that is mentioned over here can, as I just told you, it can just be a value that you have. It can be a thought. Okay, it can be an ideology. It can be a country also, or the country's ideology. Okay, the enemy can be of different types. So now comes the topic as to what is this, or the supreme art of war is to subdue this enemy without doing this. So then how can you do it? Will the enemy get subdued? If you're subduing it like that, will the enemy come back again? All of these things are what we're going to explore in this particular essay. So let's try to break it down like that. So we are saying the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Without fighting. Okay. So first of all, let's question that topic itself. Why do we have to subdue the enemy without fighting? They are saying it's the supreme art of war. But that's not a reason good enough, right? So why is that considered to be like the supreme art of war? I mean, it could be one of the methods of war, but why supreme art? And this is where it comes about that, see, when you call something supreme, it means that there is nothing past it. There is nothing above it. So in war, when I'm saying something is the supreme trick, it means that there is no other strategy that will cross it. Why? Now, for example, if you're normally fighting, if you're using force, okay, what happens is when you try to use force, the enemy can also try to hit back with force. So what happens is it would finally lead to something of a very, a kind of a scenario where you have seen these Mexican standoffs where everybody shoots, points the gun at another person and then they are like, okay, who's going to shoot first? And eventually everybody shoots each other and everyone dies. So when I'm saying there is force or violence used, it means that it could lead to a crisis situation where everyone is badly affected. And when something is supreme, that should not be the outcome of it, right? So if I'm saying fighting is the supreme thing, use violence, that's the supreme thing, then what's the consequence of it? Like if you're using violence and everybody is getting affected, is that so supreme? No, it's not. Okay, it's not that supreme that, you have to promote it. Okay, so that is one way. Another way of, trying to try to stop your enemy would be trying to completely crush the enemy. Crush the enemy physically, morally, and if it's like a kingdom or something, plunder the entire thing, crush them completely like that. That could be another way. Then what happens? For the time period, for a brief time, maybe things remain fine. Maybe for a very brief time, things are peaceful. But then what happens? Because this is a very humiliating kind of a defeat, what happens is more or so, they will somehow try to come back. So it's not sustainable. So here what happens is there is a certain humiliation involved in this kind of a thing that again brings back the enemy for revenge. Okay, so again, crushing the enemy, not a supreme method. Then comes into the fact that something like a forced compromise. Forced compromise, you corner the enemy into such a situation that they have nothing else but to force it out. Like for example, you are telling after the First World War, you had put Germany in such a kind of a situation, and that is what happened. So Germany was put in such a kind of a situation where they said that, you know what, Germany, you have already lost the war, so please don't talk too much. We are going to demilitarize your Rhine area. We're going to have a Treaty of Versailles that's going to absolutely put you in like shackles, not allow you to have any kind of arms production, not allow you to have like the freedom that you used to have. So it's like a forced compromise, and Germany, because of its circumstance, then agreed to it. But then what happened? Circumstances changed, and because this was a forced compromise, it was not even taking account into the fact that was Germany okay with all of these scenarios? Is it okay to force this kind of a compromise on them? What happened is, this is what actually is that sentiment that Hitler had tried to tap in with the Germans. They said, like, don't you remember how they actually treated all of us after First World War? Don't you want to have get back at them? And that is what kind of fueled or became like a major trigger point. So what happens is, forced compromises again does the very counteractive effect. And look at what we had after that. We had the Second World War, which was more disastrous than the first one. So forced compromises again, not a supreme war method, because forced compromises does not treat the enemy equally. So if these are all the cases, then you need something where even in defeat, the enemy would feel dignified, respected, equally treated, not like in a crushing sort of humiliation. So you need that enemy to be sent off in a very dignified way. only then there can be some sort of sustainability in a war situation. And remember, when I am telling you war of anything, I am keeping in mind the fact that I am not talking about one physical war, which is like a Gulf War or something. I am talking about any kind of war, which would be in what all scenarios? In all of these scenarios, war that is there for values, war that is there for ideologies, war that is there for some country, thought, etc. Okay, so keep that in mind, and that is something you will need when we try to, again, now first, what have we explored over here? We have explored as to why you need a supreme kind of a war method. You need a supreme kind of a war method so that your enemy goes back or goes away in a dignified, equitable manner or equal manner, and they don't feel the necessity to, no necessity to come back again. Come back again. This is why you need a supreme kind of a war method. Primary idea is the war should end, right? In any of these methods, what happens is war ends now, then begins later in a more cruel and disastrous way. So that cannot be the case. War should end forever. And war will end forever when both sides feel that, okay, we have done our part, we have done stuff equally, and we feel, okay, we have got the price of our crimes, everything, and then yes. Then what happens is each of the sides doesn't feel the need to start that war again. And that is your supreme war method. So, you have first tried to explore as to how all of these things, which is violence, unscrupulous method, force, morally invalid, any methods that are morally invalid today, spraying Agent Orange on people, spraying, these kind of chemicals, having chemical warfare, driving people out, persecuting people out, killing them brutally. All of these things will always have some kind of a pore left back, and it will come back into a bigger hole. So you have first explored how any of those fighting is not a dignified method, but you need a dignified method, and thus we are now introduced to the topic as to how do you have dignified or how do you have supreme war methods. So first part of the essay, you are establishing that fighting is not a supreme war method. Then you are trying to explore like what else could be a supreme war method. So here comes the idea that if the war is against a value, if the war is against a thought or an ideology, if the war is against a country or a belief system, in any of these cases, the supreme art of war will involve integration, countering with an opposite ideology. One example of this is when the British came to India and the British was trying to unleash such kind of violence on the Indian citizens. Indians fought back not through that same thing, but Indians fought back with the strength of an ideology. Indians fought back with Swaraj as an idea. Indians fought back with Ahimsa as an idea. And ideas can travel much more faster than all these different policies where you're killing the people. So what happens is, this is the reason why points in history, India's fight was not against British, but technically India's fight was something against, trying to achieve their own freedom, trying to achieve their, right to practice non-violence, all of these things. And that is why it got such wider acceptance. This is also a case in point you would have studied this in history. When we tried dealing violence with violence, it put both of them on the same track. So this is where a lot of our revolutionary movements in India, even though so commendable and so courageous, they did not see a sustainable success, because each and every time there was violence from one side, they got hit back with more violence, more force, and then they got crushed. It crushes the morale of people, it crushes the motivation of people. But when you realize that you're fighting for something bigger, you're not just fighting to be at the end of someone's gun, you're fighting for the fact that, I need to free my country, which is such a bigger ideology than hitting that next British general. What happens is the cause for which you are fighting is so expanded. And this is the reason why we could get independence on such ethical terms. Got it. This is also the reason why in the non-violence movement, when there was an act of violence, Gandhiji did stop the movement, because that would actually dilute the war against your enemy. Got it. And these things were seen in the international sphere as extremely commendable things, because, it requires so much more. You require courage to go and throw a bomb at someone, but then you require so much more courage to stand by an ideology that you feel strong. So again, that is what showed the strength of Indians, the morale of Indians to the world. Got it. So when you are fighting against an ideology, fighting against a country, you have to counter with a very opposite, or you have to counter with a very strong ideology. You have to integrate. Integrate means what? This is one of our very famous methods to solve crises, which was given by a public administration thinker called as Mary Parker Follett. Now, Follett says if you're trying to compromise people, or if you're trying to somehow eliminate them, they will always come back. But then in your war against something, you have to actually sit back, hear as to what their problems are, and reach to a solution that becomes like a win-win for both the parties. So how, and again, it varies in a lot of aspects. How can you get win-win solutions? Now, for example, there are the tariff discussions that are happening. Right now, clearly what is happening in the tariff discussions are one country trying to bully another country. It's not happening. So what will happen at the end of that war, in that tariff war? If India gets mistreated like this, India will be like, okay, fine, I don't care what happens to USA. India would take a diplomatic stand to actually not side with USA. And that kind of an alienation can cost USA a lot in a world where you have China and Russia and all trying to gang up against a country. So what happens over here? If it's a war, then you have to hear and try to integrate both the parts' ideas and try to reach to a win-win solution, because only that will become a more sustainable thing. Okay, so you either integrate things, or you oppose your war with another ideology, or you express your dissent through peaceful ethical means. And this is where that pen is mightier than the sword kind of a thing comes in, because you are dissatisfied, but then you are not going and taking a sword and fighting against someone. You are constantly expressing your dissent. You would have seen any time a war happens, especially consider this war that is there, the Russia-Ukraine war. One of the things that happened right before the Russia-Ukraine war, in the time period where Russia was actually having some influence on Ukraine, was they tried to curtail the language of Ukraine. Why? Because that means that they're trying to curtail expression. Why do you think a country as powerful as Russia bothers to curtail expression? That's because this will actually rally more people behind a cause. Okay. It will actually rally a more, if you say, okay, come on, let's go fight a war against Russia, people will be like, oh my God, that's too much of violence. I don't think I can do it. But then to repost, a tweet about Russia, or to write an article about Russian atrocities, this is something that we can actually do. And it will rally more people. So, when you are looking for a supreme war method, it should involve integration, it should involve countering with an opposite ideology, it should involve peaceful expression of your ideas. Only then, what is going to happen? You are going to have, during the war, you're going to have more people on your side, you're going to have more credibility for your cause. And also after the war, the results of the war are going to be more sustainable. Got it? So this, my dear students, is how I would go about this topic. But each time I would bring about the idea of war, I would try to incorporate examples that are not just a country-based war, but a war against ideology, like, war against apartheid, that war against racism, war against colorism, war against women's rights, the values that you hold. Currently, we have values like consumerism, and you need to fight against consumerism if you want to preserve your environment. So how do you fight against it? You cannot go and do it in a way that is again harmful for the environment. You have to do it through means that are going to be what? Integrative. So you need all the countries coming in. You need to have agreements like Paris coming in so that everybody does their bit of work. So I would go about this entire essay by, whenever I want to show an example of a war or anything, instead of just talking about the actual wars, I would try to talk about the war against any other ideology that has happened, war against any kind of uprising that is there. For example, the Middle Eastern countries that, you had the Arab Spring over there. The Arab Spring has been in making for so long. They didn't get it through violence. They got it through the youth who were protesting peacefully for their democratic rights. So each of these things, when it comes to ideology, you can have few examples, which is racism, fight against racism, fight against dictatorships, okay, fight against your apartheid. Again, fight against neo-colonialism, people trying to, subdue another country by putting economic restrictions on them. Value against consumerism, a war against consumerism, war against women's rights, etc. So I would bring in these examples, but the general structure of the essay would go about in this. So first part of the essay, I'm exploring the fact as to what is the supreme art of war and why fighting is not a supreme art of war. And then I would go about and say, like, what exactly could be included in the supreme art of war. And finally conclude as to how this is going to be more sustainable consequences for the world. I hope this topic is also clear and you were able to interpret it in such detail in the exam hall. Next, let's go to the next topic, which is thought finds a world and creates one also. Again, thought finds a world and creates one also. So, you are somehow saying that a thought, we'll explore what a thought is and everything, but in this topic, you're trying to say that there is a thought, and the thought is so powerful that it can find a destination of its own. Okay? It can find a destination of its own, and that thought can create new destinations. Okay, so thought finds a world. World means over here destination. the people who are going to rally behind that thought, the organizations that could rally behind the thought, etc. And it creates one also means that, so the thought will find its own people, even whatever time comes. And in the process, what also happens is, thought can create a new world also, create a new destination also. Out of the topics that were there in the section 1, this personally is one that is a little bit on the, if you look at the dimensions that can be generated, or if you look at the general trend of it, it has a little bit limitation in what all areas you can think about. But even this is actually something you can break down. So I'll help you how to break this down. So when we are dealing with this topic, it brings into mind a certain quote by the Buddha that says that with our thoughts, we create the world. So with our thoughts, we create the world. Also, there is this, let me try to break this down into something more palatable for us. See, if you want to break this topic into simpler terms, it comes with the idea that they're saying thought finds a world and creates one also. So let's start off with the fact that when you initially have a thought, okay, let's say I have a thought that I want to save the environment. Okay, so I am having this thought and I feel like I am doing a lot of damage to the environment, and I want to do something for that purpose. Okay, so now what happens? I have this thought, and what I try to do over here is I try to take actions. So from your thoughts, what stems about? Your actions come about. And when you start doing an action, what happens is, now for example, you are, you feel like, I'm using a lot of plastic and I need to cut down on my plastic, and this is what I am going to do as my part for saving the environment. Okay, so what do I do is, when I go out, instead of carrying taking a plastic bag from outside, I carry a cloth bag with me. Okay, so I do this action. Now what has happened? When I do this, my thought, which led to my action, has finally led to something, very actionable, very seen. A world is something like that. Okay? When I'm saying thought finds a world, it means that it can lead to something that is seen and felt. This is one thing. Okay, so I have done something actionable, I have done this, and it means that it's now not just a thought in my head, but then it has found an actionable, seen, felt, tangible consequence. This is first. Second thing is, when I do this, okay, probably there would be people around me who ask, like, why are you doing this? I mean, is it some kind of a fad? Why are you doing this? There would be a lot of questions. And when I deal with those questions with my thought, what happens is, it could maybe motivate others to follow likewise. Motivate others to follow likewise. So again, what has happened? My thought has found a group of people who also can think likewise. Okay, so the thought has found its destination. But in this doing this, what has happened? We have all through this part that first it was me, then there were lots of people, and then imagine this becomes such into a scenario where everyone's like, no, we are not going to carry plastic bags, we're just going to carry cloth bags. And then at some point the shopkeepers are like, okay, yeah, fine, nobody wants plastic bags these days, I'm going to phase out the plastic bags, I'm not going to use it anymore. What has it led to? That thought has led to a complete world or a complete scenario where now there are people, there are, interested organizations, there are other stakeholders who want to do the same. So what has happened? My thought initially, which did just find a seen or a felt aspect, has now created one all through it. It cannot just be my own creation. Now think about it. There might be similar people on different parts of the world thinking on the same lines, like, we need to save our environment. So what happens? This thought will find those people, and finally all of this will be part of a movement that is maybe, conservation or something like that. So what has happened? My thought has found its initial crowd and also has created a crowd of its own, or created a world of its own. Okay, this is one way to see it. So with our thoughts, when we say we create the world, we also have to understand it gives us so much of power that if the thought is on an opposite line, what happens? Even for that, there will be this kind of a consequence. That means, let's say, now one thought I just shared with you, which is the environmental conservation and things. What about if your thought is protectionism? You want to, let's say it started off with the idea that, I'm nationalistic. I want to protect the boundaries of my country. So that initially is my thought. Okay. So my initial thought is I want to protect my country from any external disturbances. If it is war or trade or anything, I want to protect my country. That thought, okay, that thought, or that kind of a thought which stemmed from just hyper nationalism, led to something called as protectionism. Protectionism means I will protect my country's borders at any cost. It can be economic, it can be political, I'll just protect it at any cost. So if a world leader has that kind of a mentality, what is the world that thought will find? That protectionism will find actions like imposing tariffs on other countries, mistreating the immigrants of other countries, etc. Okay, so those are the actionable things that this thought found about. But very soon, what's going to happen? That idea of protectionism, when one thought is there, what is going to happen? The other countries are also going to be like, okay, if they are going to do this, we also will do the similar kind. So what happened? It will create a world of its own, create a system of its own, where some of the countries will be just bothered about protectionism and not about any other thoughts. They will not be thinking about global welfare. They will not be thinking about globalization. They'll just be thinking about their own countries. Okay. So again, what is the consequence of that? It will lead to alienation. It will lead to countries being competitive in a very unhealthy sense. It will lead to economic opportunities getting dimmed down. All of these different scenarios. Okay. So understand, now again, artificial intelligence, a thought. That thought initially found actionable consequences, but now it's creating a complete world of its own where multiple AI companies, AI has now such an impact that it's leading to people losing jobs, it's leading to companies' margins dropping, all of these scenarios coming in. So it starts off with the fact that thoughts find a world and creates one, but the world that's getting created, is it needed? Is it not needed? Is all up for question. So this can be the first part of the essay. The second part of the essay can be somewhere where do all thoughts find worlds or create worlds? Okay, Now here is the question, do all thoughts show this kind of a trajectory? And this is where you can understand that maybe when you have a thought, so for example, let's say there is this thought that comes about and says that, let's try to ensure. Yeah, so let's say there is this thought that comes about and says that, and this is to do with the fact that, the tribal development in India. Okay, so the thought, let's say initially when the thought came about, the thought was that let's integrate all of the tribal people into the mainland. Okay. Now, that thought, if it played out, what would happen? You would lead to just cookie cutter communities, which you are just bringing all of the people into your mainland, imposing your culture, imposing your political systems, your social setups on them. And some of them will actually, at least a large majority of them will fall into line. But always what is going to happen? You have led to the loss of a lot of culture, destruction of certain setups that is there. And from that, what can come about? From those kind of, frictions, you can have, tinier thoughts that come about that say that, no, what they did was not right. We should not have been integrated into this. We should have been able to preserve our own culture. Okay. So, which means what? When I'm saying do all thoughts find worlds, you also have to see the fact that, yes, most of the thoughts that are there can find their worlds, but what happens is, when this process does happen, it can also lead to the destruction of existing worlds. If you look at the roots of certain insurgencies in our country in the form of Naxalism and everything, you can see that the thought comes about because certain worlds of theirs got destructed by another thought. So what's going to happen? When thoughts find worlds, there is always the possibility of it getting countered by an opposite equal thought. Okay, and is this process actually essential? Do thoughts have to be finding their worlds and having this process? Yes. This entire thought process, pun intended, this entire thought related process is essential, because only then what happens is the best thought, whatever is there, will remain. And to quote this, for example, when the constitution makers were sitting and making the constitution, what did they try to do? They didn't try to just get stuck on one thought. They took such thoughts from different constitutions and they tried to integrate it into one. So then what happens? Only then will you get the best version of it. So thoughts find their worlds. It can create the world. But again, what happens is you cannot be so narrow-minded that you will get stuck in that world. Okay, so you need this entire process, because only then the best thought will remain. You will not get stuck in one particular thought. You will always have the scope for dissent. You will always have discussions, and through that discussions, we might not even know what happens is new worlds again, or new thoughts can get created. In the conclusion of this, you can quote, you would have heard about this very famous philosopher called as Rene Descartes, and he had come about with a quote that says, I think, therefore I am. It has many interpretations, but for what we are going to use over here, you can say that, see, I've been endowed with the ability of thought, and that thought process is what makes me who I am, and that shapes the world around me also. Okay, so thought is of essence. Even if it's a bad thought, it is of essence, because only then there would be discussions about what can be better than this. Is there an alternative to this? And that will lead to more thoughts that might actually be path-breaking, be so different from the rest of the things that we see. So this is how I have brainstormed this particular or interpreted this particular essay. I hope you've written it well. Now let's move into the last topic from section A. This is one of the most, common things that we would have heard from life. That is, best lessons are learned through bitter experiences. Okay, so starting from people who've had breakups in time and have had lots of bad experiences, they'll be like, yes, this is actually a very true thing, because, I learned the most important lessons of trust and, love and honesty and all of these things through the lot of bitter experiences. But why? Let's try to explore how to break down this topic into parts. It starts off with the fact that what are these best lessons of the world and what are these bitter experiences, and why does bitter experiences have this kind of an impact? Okay, why does bitter experiences have so much impact on us? Okay, let's try to explore this. What are the best lessons in life? Okay, what could be the best lessons in life? The best lessons in life would be to the ones that shape us, the ones that gives us new set of values, is the ones that determine our actions. Best lessons will do that. The best lessons can also be a little bit painful to learn. The best lessons will always have to be kept on practiced. The best lessons of life will always end up with some kind of a teaching moment. This is what makes something as a best lesson. Okay, why best? Because you will learn lessons every day. You learn the fact that, okay, when you are booking Uber, you have to book half an hour ago when it comes to a traffic or in place. These are all lessons we learn. But are these all the best lessons? No, because the best lessons are the ones that will it will shape the way we start thinking later on. Okay, it could be lessons of kindness, it could be lessons of trust, it could be lessons of cooperation. These are the kinds of things that not only for today, for even later on, it will actually mold the way we think. And when we think on those lines, actions will follow. It can be sometimes painful to learn. You will have to keep practicing these lessons if it has to constantly stay in your mind. So these are all what the best lessons are. Now, I'm saying the best lessons are learned through bitter experiences. What makes an experience bitter? Okay, and what are these experiences? So, something is called bitter when it's difficult to accept. It's difficult to accept because think of a bitter thing at the end. You're eating something bitter. Can you easily crush it down and eat it and finish it off? No. It's difficult to accept. It will leave you with whatever you're doing will leave you, or that experiences will leave you with a an afterthought. Okay? This so-called bitter experience, whatever you have, first it's difficult to accept. Once you do accept, maybe it will leave you with a lot of afterthought as to, a certain kind of comeback as to, why did this happen? Why that kind of a thing would happen to me? That kind of a bitter experience could be there. Bitter experiences are ones that lead us to having a very, I would call it maybe humiliating experience. It could lead to that. Bitter experiences would finally or would have a set of things that we would not have experienced before. Like, for example, someone who is very new to a town, who's very trusting and everything. On the first day, he gets robbed. Okay. And he learns the bitter experience, learns it with the bitter experience that, okay, yeah, I have to be more careful over here. That should be one of my important lessons here. So what has happened over here? It will leave us, or it will incorporate in us a new or tough set of values that we probably would not even have thought of having in our mind. Like, for example, let's say someone who's very, very, against death penalty. Okay? Because human rights and everything, and he's against death penalty. Something happens in their life that, the crime or something happens to someone they know and they love, and suddenly what happens is that entire thing has changed their viewpoint on how, the criminal has to be punished. You have heard a lot of times people say that, whatever happened to the victim should happen to the criminal. Do you think these people were all thinking not on human rights or anything? What has happened? That experience has changed them in a way that they didn't even think they could change into. Okay, so they are shocked at first as to how their mind is thinking. That again, what happens leads to having a certain internal dissonance, because the same person earlier believed that death penalty should not be there in the country, and now something so bitter has happened to them that has changed them completely. So what has happened? There is a certain internal dissonance that comes with, this kind of a conflict. There's also certain dilemmas that come about. So these are all the things that give you, or when I'm saying bitter experiences, a bitter experience does all these things to you. It's difficult to accept. It was, it leaves you with, constant reminder, because see, sometimes you eat something so unpalatable that, every single time you think of food, that thought comes back into your mind. Why? Because, it's that mind reminding you, oh, no, please don't do that again. Please don't do that again. So what happens is, you are dealing with something as an afterthought. You're dealing with humiliating things. You're dealing with new set of values, etc. So now comes the question: what happens when a bitter experience happens? So a bitter experience of the sort. Let's take one example over here. A bitter experience has happened. First thing that comes about is bitter experience. You are finding it difficult to accept. Okay, like for example, the death of a loved one. It's difficult to accept. So then what happens? So the bitter experience is the death of a loved one. You're finding it difficult to accept. And then what happens to you? You go through the 5 different stages of grief, where there is denial, there is acceptance, there is anger, and all of that. And at the end of it, what happens is, you come out with a lesson. You come out with the lesson that would be maybe that, okay, yeah, we all have such little time on earth and we have to treat others with love, and you have to, at least the people around you, you have to treat with love and kindness. So now you've learned a lesson, you have a lesson with you, and then what happens is that lesson gets implemented in your life. Each time you implement that, you do that and it becomes part of your life, you do at least to a large extent, you do think, okay, yeah, this has changed me as a person. You would have seen people who are very much, running behind success and career. You would have seen this tag coming about along, in a lot of these Reddit queries and everything that, I am a 30-year-old corporate person who is going to quit his job. What has happened over there? You are going behind so many things together. You get the bitter experience of getting burnt out. And then what happens? It teaches you the lesson that, okay, you have to start living for your own self and not just be part of a rat race. Okay, so here what has happened over here is, why does a bitter experience have so much impact on us? Will include all of these points. Okay, that each bitter experience you have, with examples you can note this down. What happens? It leads to a lesson, and this is important. Each time you write about the bitter experience, you have to write the lesson that you've got from it, and how that lesson, when implemented or when put into action, how it changed you. Because I already told you, the best lessons, what will they do? They will shape us. They will give us a new set of values. They will give us new actions. They are painful to learn. They have to be practiced. So each point that you are generating should be finally as to what is the consequence that happened. You have to connect the bitter experience to this. Then only you can say that, yes, a best lesson was learned. Okay. Then, okay, come about this. Do people always learn the best lessons from bitter experiences? That is the next part. Do people always learn the best lessons from bitter experiences? Okay. Now, this is a catch. Why? Because here is where you have to introduce people when they have a bitter experience. The first lesson that they learn is not the best lesson. The first lesson that they learn is the lesson that is very much acceptable to them. Why? To learn a best lesson, it is very difficult to accept that you have been sometimes in the wrong. For example, somebody is going and, trying to approach someone and trying to ask them for, if they want to be in a relationship. Okay. So someone says no. Bitter experience. What is the best lesson that you can learn from it? The best lesson would be, okay, yes. See, each person has their own space and thoughts and mental, idea of what a relationship is. Maybe I don't fit into theirs. So, it's fine. What is the lesson that most commonly people learn? Oh, they think less of me. This is why they have said no. Now I have to somehow prove to them that, no, I'm better than them. Or I have to somehow prove to them that, they can be distracted. How dare they say no to me? These are all the lessons that someone takes from that situation. What has happened? Why is this mismatch? Because a bitter experience, because the experience is so bitter, the first set of lessons you get from it are the ones that are convenient for you. Are the ones where you can shift blame on someone else. Shift the blame on someone else. Are the lessons which you can finally accept. Okay, one example that can be easier for UPSC aspirants. You write UPSC prelims once, okay? Once, twice. Let's say this is your third attempt. You are constantly failing prelims. let's say 2 attempts you've given and you're constantly failing prelims. First lesson you will take from your failure is, what is this UPSC? It's so unpredictable. The exam is so tough. How this exam is always against me. That is one lesson people will take. The other lesson people will take is on the extreme, that I am such a good for nothing. That is why I'm not able to pass this exam. Are these both lessons correct? No. What is the best lesson? The best lesson would be, okay, yeah, maybe I didn't study well for this exam and I have not studied to the demand of this exam. That is why maybe I could have failed. So there is a mistake on my part, and it's so difficult to accept mistakes on one's own part. So what happens is you experience or you take the lessons that are convenient for you. So this leads to what? Wrong lessons and wrong outcomes. Okay, so again, not all people take the best lessons from bitter experiences. If you have to take the best lesson from a bitter experience, it also has to come about with a certain sense of personal growth. Only then will this bitter experience mean something to that individual. Then you can go about with the essay as to how you can achieve this kind of a personal growth. You can read a lot. You can see the life experiences of others. You can talk to others who've been in similar scenarios, and that will give you a certain evolution in your own self. And only then will this bitter experience lead to the best lesson. Very nice essay topic, I would say. The kind of essay topic for which there is a natural flow in the topic itself. Okay, so I hope this essay is also clear to you guys as to how to break it down, how to structure this, etc. Now let's go into our next section. The next section is our section B, and in section B again you have 4 topics. What exactly are the topics that we have to look through over here? The first topic is muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Muddy water, best cleared, leaving it alone. What is the meaning of all of this? What is this muddy water that is mentioned over here? Okay, so on the first context itself, muddy water can mean a situation of crisis. It can be utter chaos. Okay, it can be a lot of things like, for example, let's say, irrelevant ideas. Muddy water infuses in us some kind of a very confused, mixed scenario where there are a lot of conflicting values. Okay, a very a string of things that are mixed with relevant and irrelevant stuff, chaotic stuff and peaceful stuff, good values, bad values. There's a lot of mixture of things when it comes to a muddy water. And they are saying that you just leave it alone. What is the meaning of leaving it alone? One thing would be, don't go and stir it. That means that you don't have to have any kind of an external. No, the topic says there shouldn't be any external push. The topic also means give it time. You're leaving it alone. So the point is, if you take a normal muddy water and you leave it for some time, what's going to happen? Some amount of mud is going to settle down, and then there's going to be like a clarity on, what is all the sediments, what is the pure water, etc. So give it some time, and that time will actually lead to the settling of things. That is one way you can say by leaving it alone. Leaving it alone also in the first part, it means that don't go and, give any external thing. You don't have to do anything. It will remain like that. Or, when you have to actually clear that muddy water, it's always best that there is no external push. There is also it's very best that. So another way where you can leave it alone would be not by adding things extra into the muddy water. So sometimes, what happens is when you have a very confused things, you try all your best to actually, again, try to diffuse the situation. So what happens is you try to seek out whatever help you can get. But that again leads to the water getting more muddy because more and more stuff is coming into it. So again, by not adding in muddy water terms, you can say by not adding flocculants, but here let's say by not adding any external stuff. The muddy water over here, as I just said, is the situation of crisis, utter chaos, irrelevant ideas, conflicting values. It can be your mind having a lot of thoughts together, etc. Okay. Now, the topic over here, I've broken down in two parts, but the topic says muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Here, I'm taking the approach of questioning the topic. Is it actually right that muddy water will be cleared by best leaving it alone? Or don't you have to put any effort from your end to actually clear muddy water? Don't you have to filter it? Don't you have to add something else so that you'll get clumped and take it out? So this is how the model of this essay goes about. So what I'm going to do over here is, first thing, let's say there is muddy water and I am trying to explore why did the topic say that it is best when it is left alone. The topic is saying it's best when left alone, no? So why do you think it is going to be the best? It's going to be the best, at least for this scenarios, if you look at it, if there are, let's say you have so many anxious thoughts coming into your head. Okay. What happens is you're having some, per minute itself, you're having some 20 different thoughts coming into, what should you do? What can be the thing? Why do they talk like this? All of these thoughts are coming to you. If you take an action, then what's going to happen? You are going to end up with, like when you are in the muddy water scenario and you are, they're saying that it's best when you give it some time. So what's going to happen is, at the point when it's muddy water, if you take an action, it can always be an emotional, irrational thing. But when you leave the thoughts alone for some time and you take a break and you just walk a bit and everything, what's going to happen? They say your mind will get cleared. Okay. So your mind will get cleared and maybe your mind can, what happen? It can prioritize. So there is time coming in. And then what happens? The mind can prioritize the thoughts that are important. And thus, what's going to happen? It's going to lead to a good consequence. You can understand which are the ones that has to be done first. That is one way. Now, I said muddy water can be cleared with time. Muddy water can also be cleared by, not having so much of external help. Like, for example, you are confused with career options. Okay, you are so confused with career options, what you have to do and everything. So already it's a very muddy, chaotic situation in your head. And then somebody who has no context of what is happening will come and tell you like, oh, did you get 100 marks in maths? Then maybe you should be a maths professor. So what happens is, when you are in muddy water scenario, you are already vulnerable. And when you are vulnerable, every advice and every external thing that you get can put you in a position of, oh yeah, maybe that's right. Okay. So when you're vulnerable, what happens is, if you have external interference, what's going to happen? You might be swayed by their interference. That is one way. Now, when you are in muddy waters, what again happens to you is that here there's a lot of thoughts, and that thoughts can lead to emotional actions and everything. Here it's vulnerable, and it can be, you can be put into a tough scenario. When there's a lot of muddy waters in the form of conflicting values. Okay, so for example, you are sitting in an exam hall, very important exam of your life. Your friend is trying to actually copy in the exam hall, and you already have a very strong value system that says that you will not aid or you will not support any kind of copying and cheating and everything. But it's your friend, and you also have a value that is friendship. Very important value that again you hold in your mind. So what has it led to? It has led to an ethical dilemma of sorts. It's led to a dilemma of sorts. And dilemma, if you have to sort, or if you have to break down a dilemma, you essentially need to see both sides, talk to both sides. Talk to both sides in this case being that you have to ask your friend, like, why did you do this? Why, this is wrong. Why did you do this? What situation are you in? So you need to understand the context also to solve a dilemma. And to take that much, to do all of these process, you need to leave that dilemma, that ethical dilemma thing as it is, so that then only you will be able to see these both sides. But instead, if you see a dilemma and you take a quick action on it, what's going to happen? It's not going to lead to the necessary right value getting propounded or taken forward. So these are all the things where you have muddy waters, and the best thing to do would be to give it time, not have any external influence, keep it as it is, and then naturally what is going to happen? There is a process of solving the issue. There's going to come about a process that is much more clear in thought. There's also going to come about a process that will benefit maybe both sides or all the sides involved. Okay. And best of all, like for example, when it comes to ideologies or anything, neutrality always can also pay off. So muddy waters, you have the Cold War era where you have Russia and you have US trying to gain all the supporters from each end, and muddy waters at that point, what has happened is, if India also interfered in that muddy water, India would just get pulled into one of the sides. But what did India do? India stood on its own and said that I don't want to be part of the muddy water. And very naturally, what has happened is, over the time, the muddy waters also cleared down. And when the muddy waters cleared down, India got applauded for not being part of the muddy water. So what again happens? You can get some sort of an appreciation for standing your ground when it comes to muddy waters not getting stirred or not getting disturbed. But the question is this the best way to solve a muddy water situation? Like, do you always have the luxury of time and thought and, that kind of a calm to solve a muddy water situation? You have one country having a nuclear bomb with them, and then another country who's going on, trying to enter into a war scenario. And at that point, do you be like, okay, I'll not do anything. Let it just clear off on its own. Will that be a best point in that scenario? Not necessarily. So yes, muddy waters in some scenarios, what happens is it can get cleared if you allow time and thought and everything to prosper. But in some scenarios, muddy waters do need action. Muddy waters do need external sort of a filtration to clear itself. Muddy waters need some kind of a coagulant put into them so that it will all separate. So muddy waters need action at times. Muddy waters need thoughts at times to solve them. Muddy waters need external interference to solve them, etc. Okay, let's take the example of our mind itself. Our mind, so see, this is not a normal scenario where you have just normal thought. Suppose a person who's suffering from very serious cases of anxiety, okay, or depression or something of that sort, and a mental health issue, and their mind is in such a muddy condition that they are pushed towards, self-harm and suicide and everything. Do you think time is the best solution at that point? No, they need medicine. They need help. They need someone to talk to. You need external interference at that point. Because if you don't, and you say that, okay, let it stay there forever like that, that person could actually do something so critical to themselves. Understand? So muddy waters, the strategy of muddy waters always depends on the context. If it is a time sensitive, if it is person sensitive, if it is sensitive on these accounts, you cannot wait for time to play out, or if you cannot wait for the situation to slowly unravel by itself. You need to take actionable you need to take actionable things that can be done and solve the issue. Okay, so this is my second part of the essay, where I go about and say about how in a lot of muddy water scenarios, you need to have someone coming and you need external help. You cannot have the luxury of time. You need to act quickly to solve much bigger disasters or much bigger muddy waters getting created. Okay, and so towards the conclusion of the essay will go about and say, so muddy waters can happen anywhere, anytime and everything. But if you leave it just waiting for something to clear, sometimes it can lead to complacency. For example, muddy waters in India, corruption in India that is happening. Are you going to be like, okay, yeah, corruption, muddy water, big problem, I'll not do anything only. Naturally, everything will get solved. No, you need laws, you need policies. And if this is a quote that we take into our mind, what will our government policies and all be? Our government policies and all will have so much of complacency, because they are like, chalta hai, it'll happen. Let it happen when it has time. I mean, that's what is happening, but you do realize that will actually lead to not having consequences, not having actions. So this will all lead to complacencies, inaction. It will lead to some kind of stagnancy period, etc. So while time can be, and all of these scenarios can be useful, this is also something that you have to take in account. So rather than seeing a very generalized muddy water, your conclusion should be that muddy water should be analyzed on the context of the situation and then take an appropriate strategy for it. Because at the end of the day, you want the muddy water to clear. And that is your final goal. And if that is your final goal, you have to do things that are necessary for it to happen. So this is in one aspect it's necessary. This is another aspect that is necessary. And that is how you can go about with this essay. So I hope that is also clear to you. The next topic that we have to deal with is the years teach much which the days never know. The years teach much which the days never know. Here, the day is actually denoting a very short time period. Okay, and year denotes maybe in hindsight. Okay, it need not necessarily be that, it happened after 50 years or anything. It just means that in the longer run, what happens? And they're saying they teach much which the days ever know. This is actually indicating the nature of time. Okay, what is the nature of time, and how when for example you have one day, and in that one day you have so many tasks that you have to complete. When you have so many tasks you have to complete on one day, to each thought You don't apply that, okay, why am I doing this? Should it be done in this way? You will just mechanically end up doing things. But cumulatively, when you have done that over like a long period of time, and then you look back, what was I even doing for these 2 years? Maybe you've just been stamping files on a daily basis. And then you think back and you're like, yeah, okay, so what did I do? What was the purpose of my doing all of these things? So here again, what is happening is time is a construct that you are going on a daily basis. You have time. On weekly, monthly, yearly basis, all you have time. But depending on how time gets divided, your perspective towards that time changes. This is what this topic is trying to say. Depending on how, for example, you might have had scenarios where, on the same day, you have multiple activities going on. This is a phenomena that a lot of students face when they go on excursions. Okay, so you have a 1-day excursion in the morning, you're going to see this place, then there's a water theme park, then you're going for lunch. So many things are happening on a single day. And then when you come back, it feels like it's been so many days have passed. What has happened over there? Time again as a construct got changed, or time as a construct gets changed depending on what that time is used for. This is exactly what this topic tries to tell us, which means that sometimes the years that are there will teach us much more than the days we'll never know. And in some days, one day itself can teach you so many things that years will never be able to teach us. So first part of the essay is again, so understand here they have said one part of the essay which the years teaches much with the days never know. But the second part could also be that in a single day itself, if you are going to have multiple things that are so life-changing, what is going to happen? It will teach you much more things. So let's take the first part of the essay. What do years have that days don't have in this scenario? They're saying years are going to teach us so much more. How is year better than day? Year is better than day because in multiple years, what's going to happen? You're going to have experience collected. You're going to see multiple people. You're going to get exposed to different thoughts. Time is passing in these years, so it also gives you are contributing to it. Like, for example, how you view time passed. If you are the kind of person who views time passed as, yay, well-lived time, it might mean something else to you. But if you are the kind of person who's like, oh my God, each day I am passing is one more step towards death. If that is the kind of attitude you have, again, what's going to happen? This is going to mean different for you. So time spent and the goal of the time spent. So if you are the kind of person that says that every day is one day closer to death, or every day should be seen for its own merit, based on these two thoughts, again, what's going to change? How you're seeing the time also changes. So when it comes to years, normally in this particular quote, when they say that years are going to teach us much more that the days never know, the years have all this in their advantage. The years have experiences, multiple people, exposed to different thoughts, how I am seeing time, all of that contributes to how or what I can learn from the year. What is the disadvantage of the day? The disadvantage of the day is the fact that a day could have repeat repeated mundane tasks or habits for which we spend time, but in the long run, because it's a habit that you have, you don't account it as some sort of a well time spent. Every day you wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you have your coffee, you have your breakfast. This is all normal to you. You don't view it as in years later you will not say, oh, I'm so proud of myself because I had coffee every day or I brushed my teeth every day. You will not have that in hindsight. Why? Because a day will have repeated mundane tasks, and all the time you're spending for that task will not account when that is the time spent on mundane tasks will somehow cloud your judgment about how your days have been. And also, when you look at years, you must have heard people say that, my life changed after I had a kid. My life changed after I married. My life changed after I got a job in this place. Why? So, what does that have to do with this? So, again, when you look back in years, you tend to measure years in the form of achievements. What have you done? But on a daily basis, can you have an achievement every day? Can you be like, oh, I'm going to run a 21K marathon today and tomorrow I'm going to get the Nobel Peace Prize? You cannot have everyday achievements. So what happens is, every day you spend doing a repeated mundane task, you think it might lead to something, but that leading to something is seen only in hindsight. So on a daily basis, you do a lot of tasks. You don't apply cause to every task you do. You don't try to reason out, or you don't try to be rational about the decisions you take on a daily basis. Not rational or no reason for the decisions you're taking on a daily basis. On a daily basis, whatever you're doing, you might have a future goal. Or it can just be that day is your goal. You just want to finish off that day, and to survive that one day is your goal. So if that one day is your goal, it will mean different. But if you have a future goal, it might mean something else. So what have we explored over here? We are basically exploring the years teach much which the days never know. What are the things that the days never know, or what are the things that the days know? The days never know what could be your final goal. The days never know why you're doing every task. The days never know that repeated mundane task will not be counted on a day or on a yearly basis. The days never know that whatever energy you're using today, will it lead to an achievement or not. So the days have so much of ignorance on their end. They don't have so much of information. But what do the years have? The years have, because of all of this, they have information that the days don't have. And because they have information, that information teaches us. So what is different from days and years? Primarily, it's all of these things that I've just discussed, but at the end of it, you can say that the years have knowledge that the day doesn't have. And that knowledge is what is shared with us in the form of a lesson. Got it? So now, again, this is one part, but I also told you there is also something. So what if in one single day, you somehow manage to get all this? You have experiences, you've met multiple people, it has changed the way you think. Then what happens? then a single day can also have so much of information that it might take years to get collected. And in that case, a single day can teach us things that years alone could not have taught us. Okay, what you say, there was one thing when the Nirbhaya, death happened and the protests happened. Years on years, there have been women's safety issues in our country, there have been rapes in our country. But when the Nirbhaya issue happened, on a single day, multiple people came out in the form of marches and everything. India had never seen something like that. India had never seen something like that for a women-related issue. So you had multiple people coming in, demanding for justice, demanding for any kind of justice, not just for Nirbhaya, but for the rest of the women too, who have been, having some kind of a sexual assault or anything on them. And that those days taught the government and the country so much more than so many years of assault and rape and everything that couldn't teach. It taught that people, if they reach to a patience level, women, if they reach to a certain level, they have no other way than to protest, and they will protest. And as a consequence of those days is where the Nirbhaya Fund and the Justice Verma Committee, all of these things got created. In fact, even if you look at the current Bharatiya Nyaya, the new laws that are there with the criminal procedures, it all has a lot to do with the importance that is given to women issues. Why? Because it taught us so much more. So imagine, years couldn't teach us that, people will lose their patience at one point and they will come onto the roads and they'll start protesting. But those days actually taught us. Understand? So it is always dependent. So when you talk about days and years, this is what is important. The experiences that you have, what changed on that day, the time spent, all the achievements that you've had. If you're able to have all of that in a single day, that day can actually teach you much more than years also. So that is the second part of your essay. So I hope that is also clear. These essays had me thinking that, those students who wrote the exam this time, if they did spend a good amount of time on their brainstorming and things, at least, close to, at least if you're good at speed, if you have a good speed at writing, then yeah, you can, spend at least up to 50 minutes on brainstorming. Whatever essay topic you choose, the interpretations that you're going to bring in over there are the ones that will change your mark this time. So I hope you've done this. Now moving on to the 7th topic, again a quote that you normally see in a lot of places. It is best to see life as a journey and not as a destination. So why is it so important to see it like that? Okay, so again, do you notice how a lot of these essay topics have the word best? Some superlative thing has been given in all of the topics. And for me, whenever they use these superlative things like it's the best method, it's the one and only method, the first thought that goes into my mind is question that. Question that, then you will get one dimension extra. So now they're saying it's best to see life as a journey and not as a destination. Obviously, in my essay, I'm going to question why. Why is that the best method? Is there any other way to see life? So always when they give you superlatives, always think that, okay, yeah, this is a thing for you to, question it, because that will lead to other dimensions in your essay. Now, let's try to explore it's best to see life as a journey and not as a destination. So what exactly happens in a journey and what happens in a destination? So some people say, I'm so bothered about the final goal. Why is that such a important thing for them? They don't care how they reach to their destination. It doesn't matter how they reach. Its only point is that they have to reach there. So what is there in the destination that's so enticing? What is there in the destination that is so enticing is the fact that destinations are more or so achievements. And when you achieve something, it fills you in with a lot of joy. It fills you in with a sense of superiority that you've done this. Okay, and that that can be such a huge push, that the destination can be such a huge motivating factor for a lot of people. Like, you hear people saying this when you are in the UPSC exam field. You hear people say, all I want to be is just let me get into the service. Just let me get into that rank list that is there. I just want to, and some people don't even say that I want to be IAS, IFS, IPS, nothing. They say, I just want to be in the rank list. That is their destination, because that will give them the sense of joy. That will give them the sense of that is what motivates them throughout the journey. Okay, like whatever they have to do, if they have to study for 18 hours or if they have to study for 20 hours, they're ready to do that because the destination is so enticing and the destination is so, it's such a motivating factor. So, if this is all what is there in the destination, then what is there in the journey that they are saying that it's best to see life as a journey? It's best to see life as a journey and not as a destination. Why? Because, first of all, the destination should have some flaws also, no? That is why it's not the ideal way. What is the flaw of a destination? The problem of a destination is, see, all along life, people, to keep motivating themselves, will fix destination for them. Okay, so when you are in maybe school, you'll be like, okay, I want to score 90% plus in my board exams. And then in 10th, that once you've either achieved or not achieved also, you will fix another destination. So what happens is, a destination is quite like an illusion. Why? Because no destination is your final destination. You achieve something, you are because that achievement and the thrill you get of achieving something is the only motivating factor you have. If that is the only motivating factor you have, then how do you live the rest of your life? Like, for example, I'm saying that my only destination in life is I want to be in the UPSC Civil Services list. And I get into the list. I get information service, I get all of that. If that is my final destination, how do I live the rest 30, 40 years of my life? Just be like, oh yeah, one day I did achieve being in the list and that's it. That's the high point in my life, and after that I didn't do anything. This is also the reason why a lot of people who enter into the service do not do anything after that, because you have fixed yourself as a final destination, and then that final destination becomes everything, and the rest of your life is just a meaningless blob of time that is there. So, destination has a problem that some destinations can be as final, and once those destinations are reached, then what happens? You just are unhappy, you are uncontented after a time, you don't have any new destinations, no new destinations after this. No new destinations to seek out after this. And the fact that, again, when I'm saying destination, again, that itself is a illusion. Because once you reach to that destination, then starts your journey towards another one. So again, the very illusionary nature of a destination, the illusionary nature that lets people believe that once you reach a destination, you will be happy. This is one of the biggest scams in our world, where people say that, once you reach there, you will be happy. And you reach there and then you're like, yeah, for the moment you're happy, and then what happens? Then you don't feel that happiness sustaining. So again, that is also a problem. So destination can be problematic if the destination is final for you. If the destination, if it's final, then it will lead to unhappiness, illusions and everything. Also, the fact that you are unable to set a new destination after that because it's difficult. You do not know what you want. For all your life, if you've been just looking and thinking that, okay, I need to be in the IIT, some IIT that is there. All your life, you've just had experiences similar to that. And after you get into IIT, will you know what to do after that? No, because what has happened? You've curtailed yourself into this IIT destination person. You've reached to the destination, but you don't have any other experiences or anything, any motivations, etc. to set another goal for you. So what do? You set the goal that all the others around you are setting. So then what happens? You just have a very basic destination that is not even yours. Okay, so there's inability to set a new destination, and when you set this thing, no, so for example, a lot of people would have seen this. You do your BTech from IIT, and the next destination that they have is MBA from IIM. Okay, so the path is pretty clear. There's no challenge as to, oh, I have to find out a new thing or anything. So what happens? The next destination is something that everyone is following. All of you follow to that destination, and how to reach to that destination is also charted for you. So there is no much thrill now in achieving anything. Why? Because it's all been charted for you. You just have to follow all the steps. You will reach to the next destination. Gives you a sense of happiness. Then again gone. Next destination based on what the crowd does. This is the drawback of a destination. And when you see life as a destination, it can mean that you are not even living your life. So then, what can you do? What happens if life is seen as a journey? When life is... Okay, one more point before I go into the journey part. And again, when you see life as a destination, these are all the points. What happens when you reach the destination? What if you don't reach the destination and your entire life has been about that destination? Imagine the kind of pressure, the kind of trauma, the amount of sadness and regret that you will go through all through your life because you have not reached a destination. Got it? So, when you reach destination, there are drawbacks of it. When you don't reach destination, also there are drawbacks of it. So, if you are going to see life as a destination, it certainly comes with certain drawbacks. It comes with perks, which is the good stuff, but then it does comes with drawbacks also. So, then what happens when you see life as a journey? If you see life as a journey, what do you get? Every single day, any experience that you go through, you consider that as enjoyable, or if the experience is bad, you take a lesson from it. So every day, it's like having multiple destinations in a single day, where each experience becomes like a learning point, and that learning point is your destination. So if the journey, if you're seeing life as a journey, what's going to happen is you're going to have multiple experiences. You're going to let those experiences shape you. Here, no, you will have experience. You will have experience, but you will not acknowledge the experience. You are like, okay, fine. So you are like, okay, I need to reach to this place. So you are running to that place. All the sights that's around you, all the beauty that's around you, all the people that's around you, you're like, yeah, okay, fine. They'll all be there. And you're just moving forward. Got it? You're trying to reach the destination, but you have missed the complete experiences on the way that could have maybe shaped you. That could have, if you had let, they would have shaped you. Then, when you are having a journey, you might face crises on a daily basis. Even in a destination, when you see life as a destination, you will face crisis. But because you don't have any supporting system, that crisis will become the biggest crisis of your life. But when you see life as a journey, you know what happens in a journey. Sometimes your car breaks down. Sometimes you get a upgrade into business class. But sometimes you might end up in some part of the area that is uncharted. So you are open to crises. You don't see crises as the worst thing that has happened. You see crises as, oh yeah, I will cross this and move forward. Then, when it comes to journey, you will have many opportunities for growth. Why? Because you are open to experiences. So for example, you are seeing life as a journey, and you are the kind of person that after 10th standard you're like, okay, let me see like what I want to be. Maybe the popular things are doctor, engineer, and everything. So you have not fixed one destination in your mind. So what? You have let yourself be open to all the experiences. So if someone comes and tells, why don't you take a psychometric test to see, you will not be like, no, I don't want to take a psychometric test because I know I will be a doctor. The destination guy will do that. The destination person will be like, I don't need a psychometric test. I know I'm going to go to IIT. But the other person is going to be open to taking a psychometric test and would be like, oh yeah, maybe the test is saying that I should be a writer, or I should, try to maybe learn literature. So what has happened? That has actually opened an opportunity for growth that was not there for this person. So that gives you opportunities for growth. It gives you opportunities to gain more wisdom. Okay. And then when you see life as a journey, the problematic thing is you have to be very self-motivated. Okay, so there is a dip side. The dip side is that you have to be self-motivated. But once you gain that quality that you are self-motivated to move forward, then any destination will be easy for you. Why? Because you will know what to do after reaching a destination. You will know how to chart a new destination. You will know everything that could happen to you after reaching to a destination. Why? Because you have only done this for yourself. So in a way, we can also say it is sometimes the journey. It's not just best to see life as a journey and not as a destination, but it's sometimes also that the journey will teach you more about the destination. The journey will actually help you gain knowledge about what will happen. What is the destination? Is the destination worth it? What will happen to me after destination? That means if you see life as a journey, you will, anytime you face any of the problems occurring, you will have a way forward. Okay? You will not be stunted. So this is what they say is life, to see life as a journey and not as a destination. But now coming into the point, is it always best to see life as a journey and not as a destination? Is it the best method out there? See, it would have been the best method if the society around us, if all the people around us, all of them did accept this. Okay. But unfortunately, right now, for a lot of people who see life as a journey and not as a destination, they are termed unsuccessful, underachievers, less focused, etc. by the society. This is that classic example that comes about in our schools and everything. One student who has a very charted way to reach somewhere and constantly they work towards it. Students who do not have any kind of a clarity on what. And ideally, as a child, you will not have clarity on where to reach unless someone has put certain thoughts onto you. But what do our schools reward? Our schools reward the kid that has a clear path. Our schools do not try to explore with the other child that what might you become or what is the journey you want to take. So what has happened? When someone says something is the best method, it will only make sense if everybody sees it as the best method. If some people say, yeah, this is okay, but still if you don't have a destination, you're going to be like a hippie and you don't have a direction in life. That's another thing that you hear. You don't have a direction in life. And society judges you based on the different achievements that you have. So, if you have so much of achievements only, society would be like, okay, yeah, this person is very accomplished. But on the other hand, if you are the kind of person who sees life as a journey, you don't feel like, okay, I have to get a degree from MIT or IIT to prove my knowledge. I know I am knowledgeable. You have to live your entire life by trying to tell yourself, see, I'm good. But you will not receive external validation. No external validation. And that can be difficult. Okay, so coming back to this, it's best to see life as a journey and not as a destination. But unfortunately, this best method is not how society and countries and all work. And because it is like that, what happens is, when you do see life as a journey, it's not as rewarding as seeing life as a destination. So again, how can we change that? You cannot stop at that very tragedy note. You have to write as to how can we change that? We can change that only when you have clear attitudinal changes in people. People who are educated, people who come forward and say that, no, see, I don't want to do this rat race because it is not good for me. So only then what's going to happen? Clear attitudinal change will only deal or only lead to this kind of a change where this idea is considered as the best and not the other. But right now, it's the opposite. It's the destination that's considered as the best. So again, that is the flow of this essay. I hope this is more on some motivation line essay. But then again, if you are able to include all of this and things, I think it is a very interesting read. It will be a very interesting read for the examiner. And now finally, we come to the last topic, which is contentment is natural wealth. Luxury is artificial poverty. Okay. So this topic, when I was brainstorming, I was met with a lot of interesting ideas. One thing I'll tell you, contentment over here, it doesn't just mean satisfaction. It means happiness. And happiness of what? Happiness of your consciousness. Okay, not of your body, not of your soul, but happiness of your consciousness. And happiness or contentment in oneself. Contentment in oneself means being okay, being, happy with one's own body, being happy with one's own values, being happy with one's own potential, etc. Okay? And this is one side of it. And then luxury over here means, or luxury, leave the part of the natural wealth and the artificial poverty thing. But luxury over here doesn't mean that you go and buy stuff more. Luxury means lack of this kind of a happiness. Hear me out clearly. Lack of happiness in one's own self leads to finding happiness from other areas. So for some reason, you're not happy with this. So then what happens? But everybody wants to be happy, no? So you're not happy in your own self, but you want to be happy somehow. Then what do you have? You have to find out multiple things, multiple desires that could make you happy. Okay. And if it does make you happy at that point, you are happy at that particular point, it makes you feel rich and everything. But then what happens later on is, you are again back to the cycle because that happiness that should have come from within is lacking. So again, you end up having more and more stuff. This is one interpretation of it. That lack of happiness in oneself can lead to having multiple desires to get happiness. But again, when you try and get multiple desires satisfied also, you are not happy in a very long-term manner, in a sustainable manner. So again, you create this kind of a scenario. Okay. Also, there are trying to tell about luxury is artificial poverty. They're not saying luxury is natural poverty. There is a natural poverty here, no? That they are poor with the fact that they are not happy with oneself. But then they're saying luxury is an artificial poverty. So what do you do is here, what people try to say, see, they are doing this. They're having multiple desires that they're trying, and they're trying to be happy. But then they do have somewhere, if they do have a fear of judgment, what do? They try to tell to the world that they have somehow not been treated right, and to correct that thing is where they are going in for luxury. They have not been treated right. They have not been treated as a rich or, in that kind of a scenario. So you create an artificial sense of being poor so that your luxury can be validated, or your luxury can receive validation from others. Okay, very famously, I don't know how many of you have seen this, but one of these, whenever you have these Bollywood nepotism talks that is there, people keep telling about how, even all of these bigger nepotic star kids that are there, they come about and say about how they had to suffer. They had to go for auditions, and then they had to, maybe their parents did not get famous awards. That is all artificial poverty that they are creating to satisfy or to validate or to receive validation for their luxurious ways. Understand? So luxury's artificial poverty can mean two things. One is lack of happiness in oneself creates a sense of poverty for us. When we are not happy with ourselves, we can never be happy with anything else that comes about. So you feel constantly that I'm not satisfied. And that is what poverty means. Poverty means that people are not satisfied with where they are. They are not, or in that scenario, they should not be satisfied, because why? They have to somehow make do with, whatever little they have to adjust with that. That is a very difficult scenario to be. So that difficult scenario, normally when you say it's poverty, here what is happening? A sense of artificial poverty is created so that this luxury does not receive judgment. All the while, on this hand, contentment is natural wealth. Why? Because when you are content, this is not something that anybody can take away from you. If you are content with your own body, if someone comes and tells you, hey, you're fat and you need to lose weight, it will not bother you. But if you're not happy with yourself, what is going to happen? You are going to end up be like, okay, yeah, please tell me, what can I do to lose weight? And they might sell a very, expensive product to you to try to lose weight. And then what? You will end up in that consumeristic trend of buying things to actually satisfy this goal of yours or that gap of yours. Okay, so when they say luxury is artificial poverty, it can mean these many things, and contentment is natural wealth. Now comes the question, is it right to be content? And this is where the question comes about. And this is also where you can quote Buddha's quotes, where Buddha actually said, desire is the cause of all our suffering. Okay, desire to have luxury is the cause of that suffering. Desire to be contented can also lead to suffering. Okay, so when I'm saying contentment is natural wealth and luxury is artificial poverty, what happens in one aspect is this specific desire to be contented can lead to pain. And then that pain will have to be solved by other means of luxury. And again, when I'm saying luxury over here, understand it's not like some Rolls Royce or diamonds that we are talking about. Luxury means some other extra thing that will satisfy that lack that you have. Okay, so desire to be contented can lead to pain. Also, the opposite is also true. If you are someone who's always contented, then there is also the risk of not growing and evolving. And that is a big problem. Risk of growing and evolving. They will not do that. For example, I'm saying you have to be contented in your own self. Someone who is very patriarchal, they are happy in themselves. They're like, wow, this is what my father practiced. This is what my grandfather practiced. I am also practicing this and I am happy with it. I'm contented with what I'm doing. Is that actually a natural wealth? No, the person will get contentment. That is one thing. But is it something that is aspiring? Is that the kind of contentment that we want? No. Because if you are contented with your own mental state, you will never think, okay, maybe I can be better than this. Okay. So there is no scope for growing and evolving if someone is always contented with what they have. So that is one point. Second thing is, if you are contented with where you are, you will also be complacent. You will not take any new actions. If you're contented with where you are, you will not be innovative. If you're contented with where you are, you will always try to have people, or you will always try to draw people to that level of contentment. That means, what's going to happen? Not only you, even everyone around you is going to be into that trap of feeling like, okay, I'm happy with where I am. Got it? So, contentment always need not be a natural wealth scenario where contentment can lead to these kind of consequences. At that point, it's the luxury over here. The luxury over here would be to break free from contentment. Okay. So, yeah, now coming to this topic can be broken down into multiple things. One is contentment like this. One is luxury on to lack of happiness on oneself. Luxury also on the aspect of creating an artificial poverty scenario to satisfy your luxury. Even that can be talked about. Then goes about and say that that desire to be constantly contented can also be pain, and that contentment can also mean all of these things. So, none of these are scenarios for natural wealth. So, the natural wealth should primarily be something that will help you evolve maturely with time while being happy with your present self and a future self that is possible. This is where you can call that as a natural wealth I have. That means I am ready. So, to quote another essay topic over here, it's basically that will only happen if you are going forward and you're seeing that wherever I am today, I can be happy with it, but there's a scope for improvement, so I can go forward. And wherever I'm going to reach tomorrow also, I'm going to be happy with it. So, this kind of a thing is only what will be sustainable and will be called as a natural wealth. So, I hope all the topics have been now discussed, and I hope this was helpful for you. I would love to hear any other interpretations that you have. See, as it goes for essays, there is no one right interpretation. Okay, so I've spent like close to like 15 minutes on each topic and tried 15 to 20 minutes on each topic and tried to like break it down into parts, just like I would do for the UPSC exam. And that is when my mind is like the sharpest. So, and that is how I have brought this out. But obviously, you can have a different dimension to it, and I would love to hear it. So, I hope you will let me know in the comments as to what could be a different dimension that you can include in these essays and everything. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts over there. And until we meet next time, take care and happy learning.